Welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into the complete rise and fall of Fazbear Entertainment, the most quietly cursed company in gaming history. A tangled web of smiling mascots and quiet tragedies, of family restaurants and haunted shadows, laid out as a single, gentle timeline for you to rest inside. If you're new here, this is a sleep story space. We move slowly, we speak softly, and we treat even the darkest events with a calm, measured distance, as if we're paging through an old corporate archive in the quiet hours after midnight. You can expect a low, whisper-adjacent narration, long, flowing sentences, and the reassurance that nothing loud or sudden will break the fragile edge of your dream. Tonight's story belongs to Fazbear Entertainment, a fictional company, yes, but one drawn with such careful detail that its history feels almost real. We will follow it from a single, modest family diner with golden bear and rabbit suits, to crowded chains of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, to neon-soaked megamalls and VR studios, and finally to a realm of digital ghosts where the brand survives only as corrupted code and legal paperwork. What begins as a simple partnership around animatronic characters becomes a legacy that refuses to die. Across this video, we'll walk through a full, unbroken timeline, step by step, from the first springlock experiments and early business decisions, to missing children and cover-ups, to rebrandings that try to bury the past beneath fresh paint and new mascots. We'll trace how each choice leads quietly to the next. We'll see lawsuits answered with PR spin, and tragedies met with relocation instead of confession. And later, a desperate attempt to turn the company's own haunted reputation into marketable horror attractions and games. This will not be a jump scare experience. Instead, think of it as a quiet corporate ghost story, told like a bedtime history lesson. Behind every cheerful poster and training tape, there are restless spirits, safety violations, and memos written by people who are just trying to keep the lights on one more quarter. From the first animatronics dancing for innocent children, to the Funtime designs hidden underground, to the VR titles and AR services that let the curse seep into headsets and phones, we will let the tale wash over you at a gentle pace. You do not need to stay fully awake with us. You can drift in and out, letting your attention fade and return like a tide, knowing that the story will keep moving forward in a clear chronological line. If you fall asleep while we're still in the early diners, you can wake to find us in the Pizzaplex era, discussing digital corruption and final collapse, and still feel the path that led us there. By the end, there will be nothing left of Fazbear Entertainment, but ashes, rumors, and a paper trail of unanswered questions. And together, we'll have followed its entire haunted history from first dream to final ruin. So settle in, get comfortable, and when you're ready, we'll open the doors to a small, unassuming diner where it all began. How this night's journey will unfold. We'll reach for that door in a moment, but before we step inside, it helps to know how this long night will unfold around us. Think of what follows as a quiet walk through decades. A timeline will follow step by step, drifting slowly from one era to the next, while you rest and simply listen. We'll begin in the 1970s, in that first small diner with its grease-stained kitchen and experimental springlock suits, when Fredbear's Family Diner is just a modest partnership between Henry Emily and William Afton, and the dream still feels innocent. From there, we'll move into the early Freddy Fazbear's Pizza locations of the 1980s, through birthday parties and arcade lights, through the missing children incident and the first major cover-ups, as the company learns how to hide tragedy behind smiling mascots and carefully worded statements. From those early restaurants, we'll follow Fazbear Entertainment into expansion and decline, high into bites and lawsuits and shuttered storefronts, watching as each new pizzeria tries to outshine the haunted shadows of the last. We'll visit the strange underground world of Circus Baby's Pizza World and the sister location facility, where the business side of Afton's work collides with his secret experiments, and where remnant and possession quietly rewrite the rules of life and death behind the walls of a children's entertainment brand. As we move into the 1990s and beyond, we'll watch the company retreat, rebrand, and then resurrect itself as spectacle. There will be the horror attraction built on its own ruined legend, training tapes and safety memos that read like confessions, and later, a gleaming Pizzaplex that tries to bury decades of quiet tragedies under neon lights and corporate optimism. Eventually, we'll leave the tiled floors altogether, following Fazbear's legacy into VR games, AR services, and glitching headsets where restless spirits learn new ways to reach out. Throughout all of this, the tone will stay calm and descriptive, with a gentle, slightly ominous edge. We'll keep our focus on the people behind the mascots. Henry and William, their children, the missing kids whose names are half remembered in newspaper clippings, the guards and technicians who walk the halls at night. We'll pause for soft recaps. We'll mark the years clearly, and we'll let the tale wash over you so you don't need to chase every detail to feel the weight of the story. Most of all, we'll treat Fazbear Entertainment itself as a character, one that refuses to die, a company that monetizes its own cursed history, that licenses its scandals, and that turns disappearances and hauntings into attractions, games, and merch. By the time we reach the digital age, when the mimic and other intelligences slip into code and networks, we'll see that the setting has changed from kitchen grease to circuit boards, but the core curse has not. In these quiet hours, as we move from diner to mega mall to VR headset, you'll be able to simply lie back and listen, while the tangled web of Fazbear's rise and fall slowly unspools around you. A shared night across the world, and as that tangled web slowly unspools, it isn't just doing so in one place or for one person. Right now, there are many of us sharing this same strange history together, scattered quietly across the world, all listening to the rise and fall of the same haunted company. Some of you are in small bedrooms, with curtains half drawn and the glow of a phone screen the only light in the room. Some are in cramped dorms, with a roommate already asleep nearby, while this timeline murmurs in the background. Others are on late-night buses or trains, watching shadows slide across the glass, or in quiet living rooms where the day has finally let go. Different cities, different countries, different lives, but the same story drifting slowly through the quiet hours. There is a gentle comfort in that. This cursed corporate history, with all its quiet tragedies and restless spirits, becomes something familiar, a kind of ritual. Many of you come back to these long, complete timelines again and again, letting the same names and dates and locations wash over you until they blur into a soft, haunted lullaby. From Fredbear's Family Diner to the Pizzaplex, from missing children to digital ghosts, it becomes a pattern your mind recognizes, even as you fall asleep halfway through. A small pattern interrupt before we go deeper. If you notice that this helps you relax, or makes it a little easier to drift off, you can always leave a like or subscribe later when you're more awake, when morning light is back and your thoughts are clearer. There is no pressure now. Right now, the only task is to listen or not listen, to let the tale wash over you and fade in and out of focus as you need. At some point, if you feel like it, you can also tell us in the comments where and when you're listening. Midnight in a crowded city, early morning before school, a rainy afternoon with headphones on and the rest of the house distant and muffled. Over time, those comments become a little tapestry of nights and days, a shared timeline of our own, stitched together by this larger history of Fazbear entertainment and its long, haunted legacy. We will not stay in this metaspace for long. We are about to step-by-step return to the story itself, back to the first flicker of Fazbear's history, when there was no Pizzaplex, no VR headsets, no corporate training tapes, only a modest diner, 2 partners, and a dangerous dream. Take one more breath, let your shoulders loosen, and let the shadows settle around you. From here, we go back to the beginning, where the bear first learned to smile. In the haze of the 1970s, let's begin. We are drifting slowly now into the late 1970s, into a haze of cigarette smoke and neon signs, of cheap carpeting that never quite looks clean, and family diners that promise bottomless soda refills and a break from the restless world outside. In this dim amber light, the future feels small and manageable. A simple dream of birthday cakes, paper hats, and songs that always end on the same comforting note. There is no talk yet of lawsuits or missing posters, only the gentle hope that a smiling mascot can keep children laughing for a little longer. This is where Fazbear entertainment is only a seed, not a headline, not a scandal, not a legend whispered about in haunted shadows. At first, it is just an idea passed across a worn tabletop. What if you could blend food, family, and mechanical characters into one cozy, slightly uncanny experience, where the show never needs a break and the performers never get tired? A small stage, a handful of tables, a kitchen that runs too hot, and in the center of it all, an animatronic bear who can sing on cue. That is the whole business plan, written between coffee rings and late-night sketches. Around that idea gather 2 minds, very different, yet bound together by this early vision. Henry Emily, quiet and careful, sees gears and servos as a kind of language, a way to make metal move with almost human softness. He thinks in blueprints and safety catches, in how to keep an innocent audience safe while the machinery hums behind the scenes. William Afton, by contrast, is restless and reaching, already looking past the first diner to the next town, the next franchise, the next way to squeeze more profit and spectacle out of the same smiling faces. Henry worries about how the jaw mechanisms might fail. Afton wonders how many locations could share the same design. Together, they begin to give shape to what will become Fredbear's family diner, the first true flicker in this long timeline. A simple sign on a modest building, a mascot named Fredbear with a friendly bow tie, and perhaps a partner character waiting in the wings, all promising parents a place where birthdays feel easy and predictable. In those early days, the animatronics and suits are experimental, ingenious, and dangerously flexible, blurring the line between costume and machine in ways that feel clever now and catastrophic later. But for the moment, the music is loud enough to drown out those doubts. If we let the tale wash over us, we can feel how fragile this beginning really is, how every choice these 2 men make will echo forward through decades of quiet tragedies and strange returns. What starts as a modest business venture and a local curiosity with mechanical singers will slowly twist into a tangled web of disappearances, cover stories, and restless spirits that refuse to let the doors stay shut. Step by step, we will watch this cozy diner expand into a franchise, then collapse into rumor, then rise again as something colder and more corporate, until even the digital world is not far enough to escape its legacy. For now, though, we stay here in the late 70s, at the moment when the bear first steps onto the stage and the audience claps, unaware that history has just begun to turn. Fredbear's family diner. The first stage lights, the lights come up on something small. Not a mega mall, not yet a franchise, just a cramped little diner tucked beside a parking lot, and its sign flickering with a cheerful bear's face, while the rest of the street sinks into evening shadows. Inside, the air is thick with fryer oil and spilled soda. The checkered floor already scuffed and dulled, the tables a little sticky to the touch. But under the warm yellow lamps, it all feels, at first glance, innocent. There is only one stage, a low wooden platform pushed against the far wall, its curtain faded, its edges chipped where children's shoes have kicked it over and over again. 2 spotlights hum quietly overhead, dust drifting slowly through their beams like tiny ghosts. And in the center stands Fredbear, a golden bear with a purple hat and bow tie, his smile wide, his eyes just a bit too glassy. When he moves, there's a soft whir of servos and clacking gears, a mechanical heartbeat that fills the quiet hours between birthday songs. Fredbear is Henry Emily's pride. Henry, the quiet engineer in the back room, is the one who sketched this character on napkins and scrap paper, then turned ink into metal and fur. His early animatronics are clever but limited, built from whatever parts he can afford. Their endoskeletons a careful lattice of joints and rods that can sway, nod, and strum a plastic guitar, but only along tight, pre-planned paths. Each movement is a compromise between imagination and budget, between how alive they look and how fragile they really are. Beside Fredbear, at least in some tellings of this tangled web of history, stands Spring Bonnie, a lankier yellow rabbit with longer limbs and a more flexible frame, designed not just to perform, but to be worn. Here we meet the first springlock suits, those dual-purpose creations that blur the line between costume and machine. Inside their shells, metal frames can be cranked back, springs locking sharp mechanisms against the walls, so that a human performer can step in, zip up, and walk out as the character itself. On paper, it is elegant. One suit that can stand on stage by day and be worn for close-up greetings at night, saving on staff, saving on storage, saving on cost. This is where William Afton's influence shows most clearly. While Henry worries over gear ratios and safety latches, Afton is already watching the register, already imagining more diners, more stages, more bears and bunnies smiling from billboards. He is the business-minded partner, the one who looks at Fredbear and sees not just a character, but a brand. He talks about franchising while wiping down those sticky tables, about cheaper materials and faster assembly, about how children will beg their parents to come back again and again. To him, the springlock suits are perfect tools, flexible, efficient, and just safe enough on paper to pass. But inside the walls of those suits, metal is always waiting, held back only by tension and trust, one mistake away from snapping forward. Even now, in these early days, we can feel the unease beneath the gentle music. The same technology meant to delight children, those whirring endoskeletons and smiling suits, already carries the seeds of quiet tragedies. A damp costume, a rushed change, a faulty spring, and the dream of a friendly mascot can twist into something far darker. For the moment, though, the parents clap, the children laugh, and the restless spirits that will one day haunt these halls have not yet been born. Step by step, Fredbear's Family Diner will lead us from this cozy stage toward accidents, bites, and disappearances, as the partnership between Henry and Afton begins to fracture under the weight of what their creations become. Two fathers, two futures, Henry and Afton. Step by step, as the applause in that little dining room fades into the quiet hours of closing time, we can see that Fredbear's Family Diner is really being shaped by two very different men. On one side of the stage, in the plans and blueprints and careful measurements, there is Henry Emily. On the other, in the contracts, the budgets, and the smiling sales pitches, there is William Afton. Henry moves slowly, by design. He is meticulous, almost to a fault, and the kind of man who will stay after dark to tighten one more bolt or test one more safety latch, because in his mind, no child should ever be hurt by something he built. He thinks in terms of mechanisms and melodies, of how a hinge sounds when it opens, of how a spotlight falls gently on an innocent face at the edge of the stage. Expansion is tempting, but safety and creativity come first. And when he looks at Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, he sees not just machines, but the legacy he will leave to his family. At home, that legacy has a name. Henry's daughter, curious and bright, grows up around sketches of characters and half-finished puppets, drifting slowly between play and prototype. To her, the diner is an extension of her father's imagination, a place where his quiet dreams have taken shape in metal and paint. And Henry is not loud about his devotion. Yet every cautious decision, every delay, every extra test is a small promise to her that this world he is building is safe, that the shadows here are only part of the show. William Afton, by contrast, is restless, even when things are going well. He can be charming when he wants to be, the kind of partner who can reassure investors, calm worried parents, and talk about innovation with a bright, convincing smile, while privately eyeing the next way to cut costs or push the technology further. Where Henry sees boundaries, William sees obstacles. Where Henry hesitates, William accelerates. Profit, control, and the thrill of breaking new ground guide his hand, even when that ground is moral rather than mechanical. He is a father as well, and his children feel the pull of this place in a different way. There is the quiet, fearful boy we will come to know as the crying child, always uneasy around the towering suits, and Elizabeth, drawn toward the animatronic world with a dangerous fascination. For the Afton family, the diner is not just a stage, but a promise of more elaborate attractions to come, more complex machines, more chances to test the limits of what these characters can do. In this small building, their hopes and flaws share the same spotlight. Henry's caution and love of craft, William's ambition and hidden cruelty, all reflected in the painted smiles of the characters they bring to life. The diner becomes a mirror, quietly holding their choices, their secrets, their competing visions of the future, as restless spirits of possibility gather in the haunted shadows just beyond the curtain. If we let the tale wash over us, we can almost feel the moment before everything changes, hanging in the air like a held breath. Because before Fazbear Entertainment even has a proper name, before the timeline fills with lawsuits and disappearances, a single devastating incident at this unassuming diner will shatter the illusion of safety and set their children and their creations on a path that neither father can ever take back. The first bite, Fredbear and the crying child. We stay with that held breath for just a moment longer, drifting slowly into the soft chaos of a birthday afternoon at Fredbear's family diner. The lights are low but cheerful, coloured bulbs reflecting off plastic tablecloths, while balloons tug gently at their strings and paper hats slide down over children's eyes. There is the warm, heavy smell of pizza and soda syrup, the clatter of arcade machines in the corner, and on the small stage, the looming silhouettes of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, frozen between songs like patient giants waiting to wake. Parents talk quietly at the edges, half watching, half trusting the show to do its work, while staff in simple uniforms move from table to table with practiced smiles. We can almost see the frosting-smeared plates, the cardboard party favors, the innocent drawings of friendly bears and rabbits taped to the walls. Yet even in this cozy scene, the animatronics cast long shadows, their wide jaws and fixed eyes promising fun, but hinting at a different legacy hiding just beneath the surface of the paint and fur. At one of those tables sits a small boy we will come to know as the crying child, William Afton's youngest. He keeps his paper hat clutched in his hands instead of on his head, his gaze flickering nervously toward the stage, flinching each time Fredbear's mouth opens in a mechanical laugh. Where other children see mascots and music, he sees teeth and metal and something that feels wrong, as if the characters from his nightmares have stepped into the daylight and learned to sing. His older siblings, restless and unkind in the way that children sometimes are, turn his fear into a game. They tease him with masks, chase him down the narrow party room, lift him off his feet while he cries and protests, insisting that Fredbear wants to give him a special birthday kiss. In their laughter, we hear the first of many quiet tragedies that will ripple through this family, a cruel joke that walks him, step by step, toward the open jaws on stage. The moment itself is strangely small. A lift, a struggle, a child held too close to a mouth designed to close with cheerful finality on a birthday cake or a microphone. A faulty sensor, a misread signal, a fraction of a second where costume and endoskeleton disagree about what is soft and what is safe. Then pressure, a sharp mechanical clamp, and suddenly the room falls into a silence so complete it feels physical. As adults surge forward and someone shouts for an ambulance that will not be enough. In the days that follow, the diner's decorations come down, but the damage does not. The crying child lies quiet in a hospital bed, machines breathing for him, while William and his family fracture around the weight of what has happened. Guilt hangs over the siblings, over every remembered joke and shove, while their father retreats into a colder place, where grief and control begin to twist together into something haunted and deliberate. For William, this is not just a tragedy. It is a problem to be solved, a question about life, death, and machinery that will echo through the rest of the timeline. From the company's side, the response is careful, practiced even this early. The incident becomes an accident, a malfunction, a rare occurrence in carefully worded statements, while lawyers advise that admitting too much could end everything before it truly begins. Fredbear's quietly closes, to be replaced, rebranded, and folded into a larger Freddy Fazbear's image, as if a new mascot can erase the haunted shadows of the old. This is where Fazbear's corporate logic is born. When something goes wrong, you do not confront it. You bury it under fresh paint, new slogans, and a slightly different smile. That first bite leaves an invisible scar across both a family and a business, teaching William that machines can take as well as entertain, and teaching Fazbear Entertainment that the public will forget if you give them a new stage and a new song. As we move forward, we'll watch how this quiet decision, to spin tragedy instead of facing it, guides every reopening, every remodel, and every carefully worded denial that follows, until the restless spirits behind those friendly faces refuse to stay hidden any longer. From diner to brand, the birth of Fazbear Entertainment. And so, tragedy became a lesson in marketing rather than a call for reflection. And the people in charge discovered that if you change the paint, the public would change the subject. In that quiet realization, a small diner with a wounded reputation began drifting slowly towards something larger, something with shareholders, stationery, and a new name that could outshine the headlines. Money notices what survives bad press. Local investors watching parents still line up for birthday packages and character appearances saw that the animatronic dining concept was strangely resilient, that families wanted distraction more than they wanted answers, and that the numbers on the ledger cared very little about quiet tragedies. Meetings followed in back rooms and rented offices, where William Afton laid out projections and Henry Emily laid out blueprints, and together they argued that if one little diner could endure a scandal, a chain of them might build a legacy. To do that, they needed something bigger than Fredbear. The name was rooted in one location, in one stage, in one accident that some people still whispered about in the shadows. So, step by step, the brand stretched outward. Fredbear's Family Diner became the prototype, while the new banner, Fazbear Entertainment, promised a broader dream of family fun, safer, brighter, more modern. Out of that rebranding came a new face, a friendlier bear in a top hat and bow tie, not golden, but a warm, dependable brown. Freddy Fazbear, designed to be more marketable, more toy-friendly, easier to print on cups, napkins, and television ads. Early corporate decisions followed with a slow, methodical rhythm. Rather than one handcrafted stage, they standardized floor plans, repeating dining rooms and party areas from town to town, so that a child's birthday in one city would look almost identical to a party 3 states away. Animatronic designs were replicated, endoskeletons ordered in batches, plastic shells molded by the hundreds, creating a small army of Freddys, Bonnies, Chicas, and Foxies that could be swapped, repaired, and shipped like any other product. A recognizable logo was chosen, a smiling bear's face encircled by reassuring text about family, food, and fun, and marketing language was polished until the words safe and wholesome appeared almost as often as pizza. Inside those early meetings, though, the mood was not entirely celebratory. Henry raised concerns about the springlock mechanisms, about maintenance schedules and emergency procedures, and he pushed for stricter testing, more staff training, and fewer cost-cutting shortcuts. Afton, backed by new investors and an emerging board, countered with budgets, projections, and the reminder that every added safety feature slowed expansion. While Henry saw innocent children on the dining room floor, Afton saw potential locations on a regional map, each one a new revenue stream. That tension became the quiet heartbeat of Fazbear Entertainment's growth. As the company expanded, the people making decisions moved further away from the sticky tables and arcade carpets, their world measured in quarterly reports rather than ruined birthdays. Policies about safety were written in careful language, but enforcement drifted slowly into the background, and the haunted shadows of earlier incidents were buried under new slogans and grand openings. From this distance, and we can see how the timeline bends. A brand polishing its image, while restless spirits gathered just out of sight. a boardroom approving new sites without ever hearing the creak of a poorly maintained suit. As we continue, let the tale wash over you and watch how each new location, each new mascot, quietly deepens the tangled web that will one day pull Fazbear Entertainment down. The first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. New faces on stage. From that distance, the company looks almost abstract, just numbers and memos and expansion plans. But when we drift slowly back down to ground level, we find ourselves inside a very real place. The first true Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The lights are brighter here than they ever were at the diner. The carpet louder, the walls busier. Every surface crowded with posters of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, promising endless fun, endless prizes, endless smiles. Children race past in paper party hats, while parents hover near plastic booths, and above it all, the stage glows like a small artificial sunrise. Freddy stands in the center with his microphone, Bonnie with his guitar to one side, Chica with her cupcake to the other, and the Pirate Cove curtain hints at Foxy waiting just off stage. A secret reward for the curious. They move with clunky mechanical certainty, servos whining softly, mouths opening a fraction too wide. But for the families packed shoulder to shoulder on the sticky floor, they are technological marvels, the future of birthday parties made metal. Songs loop on pre-recorded tracks, the band's movements carefully synchronized to cheerful jingles about friendship and pizza. And as we watch, and we can feel that strange early charm, that gentle illusion that these characters might notice you, might lean down and sing just a little louder because you are there. In the quiet corners between songs, the endoskeletons click and settle, restless in their shells, while the crowd chatters and the smell of grease and sugar hangs thick in the air. Fazbear Entertainment leans into this dream as hard as it can. There are birthday packages with printed crowns and personalized banners, prize corners overflowing with plastic trinkets, and colorful signage repeating the same careful phrases about safety, happiness, and family fun. Where fantasy and fun come to life, the posters say. And in these early days, the slogan still feels mostly true, and not yet twisted into bitter irony by the tragedies that will follow in the haunted shadows of this timeline. Behind the scenes, though, the partnership is shifting. Henry, meticulous and quietly anxious, walks the back halls checking locks and emergency exits, worrying about overcrowded rooms, exposed wiring, the way curious, innocent children squeeze through any gap they can find. William Afton, meanwhile, is taking firmer control of day-to-day operations, handling hiring, maintenance schedules, and security protocols with a confidence that reassures investors while it quietly sidelines Henry's concerns. Step by step, safety reports become cost spreadsheets, and kind warnings turn into policy footnotes. Afton chooses which night guards to bring on, which cameras to install, which doors can stay unlocked for better flow. And the staff grows used to his presence in the quiet hours, moving through the darkened restaurant long after closing. Out front, Freddy and his friends beam down from their posters, promising a legacy of harmless fun. In the back, someone has already started watching the children a little too closely, and soon, one busy afternoon, a small group will follow a familiar golden figure into a place the cameras never quite see. We will follow them there next. The missing children incident, vanishing in plain sight. We follow them through the noise of a busy afternoon, into a moment that begins like any other, and quietly rewrites Fazbear's history. It is bright outside, the kind of ordinary day when parents linger over lukewarm coffee and paper plates, or while children weave between tables, chasing tickets, prizes, and a singing bear's promise of harmless fun. Out front, the show goes on. Freddy leads a birthday song. Parents clap along a little offbeat, and the smell of cheap pizza hangs in the air, comforting in its own way. Staff move through the dining area with practiced smiles, cleaning spills, resetting tables, guiding parties to the stage. And in the middle of that crowd, drifting slowly between families, there is a man in a familiar costume, a yellow rabbit that looks like it stepped straight off the posters and into real life. He is not rushed. He does not need to be. One child at a time, he leans down to speak, gesturing toward the back with a performer's easy confidence, offering a private tour, a special game, or a chance to see where the animatronics sleep during the quiet hours. The first child disappears into a service hallway that smells of metal and detergent. No one notices. Why would they, in the middle of so much noise? Then another follows, and another, each small absence swallowed by the crowded room, by the tangled web of chatter and music and clattering plates. A mother glances at the stage, expecting to see a familiar shirt, and finds only strangers' children. A father checks the restrooms, the prize counter, the arcade cabinets. Minutes stretch. The birthday song ends. Panic arrives slowly, then all at once. Police are called. The restaurant is searched, front to back, storage to ceiling. Yet when the day finally empties out into the evening, there are no bodies, no clear answers, and only devastated families and a building that suddenly feels much too large, its corners heavy with haunted shadows. In the weeks that follow, in-universe newspaper clippings speak carefully of a suspect in a yellow suit, of leads pursued and interviews conducted, but there is no conviction, no confession, and no real closure. Fazbear Entertainment responds in the only way it seems to know. The location closes temporarily, framed as a safety review, a chance to improve the guest experience. Press statements are polished and gentle, expressing concern without admitting fault, and the company's marketing begins to shift, emphasizing new characters, new features, anything that might move public attention away from these quiet tragedies. Internally, denial hardens into policy. Tragedy becomes a line item, managed rather than mourned. Yet on the floor itself, something refuses to be managed. Reports begin to surface of the animatronics behaving strangely, turning their heads when no one is there, wandering a little off path, their painted smiles seeming in dim light, almost pained. The children have vanished on paper, but in the restless spirits of Freddy and his friends, their presence lingers bound to metal and wire. The brand is now truly haunted, and as we move forward in this timeline step by step, Fazbear will keep reopening its doors, pretending nothing followed those missing children back onto the stage. Haunted metal, possession, and the first cover-up. Those vanished children leave more than empty chairs and fading flyers on a bulletin board. They leave an imprint, something we can feel in the room even if no one dares to name it aloud. As the days drift on and the restaurant resumes its quiet routine, the animatronics begin to change in ways that are small at first, but difficult to ignore once you've seen them. In the bright afternoon, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy still dance through their pre-programmed routines, their songs looping gently across the tiled floor. But in the quieter hours, when the crowds thin and the lights dim, their painted eyes seem to track particular adults with an uncanny focus, lingering on night guards, maintenance staff, and managers who are working the day the children disappeared. Movements hitch for a second, then resume. A jaw opens half a beat too late. A hand raises toward an empty corner as if waving at someone only they can see. Employees begin to notice odd glitches that don't appear on any diagnostic sheet. Bonnie freezes mid-strum, head twitching slowly toward the back hallway. Chica's beak hangs open a little too wide, as though in a silent scream. Foxy, even when powered down, smells faintly wrong, with reports of a coppery tang beneath the usual grease and ozone, and of dark, sticky fluids collecting in joints that are supposed to hold only lubricant and dust. The air around the stage feels heavier, like the haunted shadows themselves are watching. Within the lore of this tangled web, we understand what the staff can only whisper about. The murdered children's spirits, restless and unwilling to pass on, have slipped into the only vessels available to them. Metal endoskeletons and fiberglass shells become stand-ins for lost bodies, and the cheerful mascots designed for innocent birthday songs now carry a second life inside them. A life made of grief, confusion, and quiet tragedies. What was once a simple attraction is now a graveyard that moves and sings. On smoke breaks and during late-night cleaning, workers trade stories in low voices. They talk about seeing Freddy turn his head after closing, about hearing faint sobbing from inside a locked service room, about that strange smell that never quite washes out of the fur. Management, however, responds with calm memos and technical jargon, calling everything sensor drift, servo desync, or humidity-related corrosion, carefully avoiding any language that might imply guilt, liability, or a haunted legacy. Rather than admit that something is terribly wrong, Fazbear chooses its first major cover-up. Certain suits are quietly retired for refurbishment, rolled into back rooms and storage closets, and their names removed from schedules and promotional posters. Staff are shuffled, security logs trimmed, and a fresh coat of paint covers walls that once held missing posters. The restaurant reopens with a slightly altered lineup and a carefully worded statement that mentions maintenance upgrades, but never the children. This decision, to reopen on top of unresolved horror, settles into the company's DNA. Step by step, every future location will follow this pattern. Tragedy, denial, cosmetic change, and another grand reopening. And as we move forward in this timeline, drifting slowly toward new restaurants and new disasters, we'll see that the spirits inside those suits are not the only things Fazbear tries and fails to bury, reopening the doors. The second-generation pizzerias. That pattern of reopening on top of old wounds leads us gently into the next chapter of this history, where Fazbear Entertainment decides that the best way to escape a haunted past is to paint over it with brighter colors. The old wood-paneled dining rooms give way to glossy tiles, balloon murals, and cartoon stars that smile just a little too wide. On the surface, it is a fresh start. A new generation of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is born. These second-wave locations are designed very deliberately to look safer, softer, more innocent than anything that came before. The classic brown bear and his friends are reimagined as toy animatronics, smaller, rounder, with plastic shells, big eyes, and pastel accents that glow under party lights. We see toy Freddy, toy Bonnie, toy Chica, and a refurbished Mangle all posed on a modern stage, framed by confetti and cheerful banners, as if the company is begging parents to forget the blood-stained headlines and remember only the birthday cakes. The decor follows the same logic, trading dim corners for bright posters and arcade cabinets, as if more light could truly banish the haunted shadows. Behind that cheerful mask, though, Fazbear's legal and PR teams are hard at work. After the missing children, after the quiet tragedies that never quite left the rumor mill, the company needs a story about safety. So the new animatronics are not just toys. They are presented as guardians. Their endoskeletons are wired with facial recognition systems, their optics and cameras tied into criminal databases, and all described in internal memos and training tapes as cutting-edge protection for the innocent. Step by step, Fazbear learns to say the right words. Improve security, enhance monitoring, a commitment to family safety. We can almost hear the slogans echoing through those bright halls, where fantasy and fun come to life, now quietly joined by reassurances about secure check-ins and watchful robotic hosts. Parents see posters about advanced technology watching over their children, while employees hear whispered reminders in the quiet hours that these systems are also there to watch them. And still, in the towns where these restaurants rise, people remember. They remember the missing posters, the police cars, the way an earlier Freddy's closed overnight without explanation. Rumors drift slowly between staff and regulars, a tangled web of half-truths and late-night speculation that never makes it into the commercials. In the back rooms, the contrast becomes physical. The shiny toy models perform under neon lights, while down narrow service corridors, older suits slump on metal racks, their fur matted, their eyes dark. Sometimes the old and new share the same building, separated only by a door with a faded employees-only sign. Here, the legacy of the first animatronics lingers like restless spirits, their shells stained by tragedy, their endoskeletons humming faintly when no one is supposed to be near. The toys represent the future, but the classics, haunted or not, refuse to be discarded. And as the 1980s move forward, with all this new paint and all this careful language about safety, something else is quietly gathering in the corners. Another incident is waiting, another bite that will carve a new scar into the Fazbear's timeline. The company believes its cameras and scanners can prevent history from repeating. Yet somewhere above the stage, in the press of a crowd and the flicker of faulty programming, the next scandal is already opening its jaws. The bite of 87, a jaw that never fully closes. And so we move forward, drifting slowly from one disaster to the next, until we arrive at the day shift that will be remembered in headlines and hushed retellings as simply the bite of 87. It is not a dark, lonely closing hour this time, but a bright, busy afternoon, the kind of day Fazbear's marketing brochures once promised to thousands of innocent families. The restaurant is alive with noise. Children crowd around the main stage, paper crowns crumpling in their hands, and while parents balance plastic trays and lukewarm coffee, staff weave between tables, calling out order numbers, wiping down spills, trying to keep things moving while the animatronics follow their programmed routines above it all. Freddy and his friends turn their heads in gentle arcs, servos humming quietly, eyes tracking preset paths across the crowd. It feels, for a moment, like a normal day in a place that has worked very hard to pretend its history is not haunted. Somewhere in that sea of faces, one child edges a little too close, or perhaps an animatronic's pathfinding pushes a little too far. The exact details are lost in conflicting reports and carefully redacted statements, but the core remains. A jaw closes where it should not. Metal teeth meet soft flesh. There is a sudden, wrong motion at the edge of the stage, and then a sharp, sickening impact that cuts through the music. The victim drops. The room freezes. For a heartbeat, there is only silence, a stunned pocket of stillness inside the chaos. Then the screaming starts, chairs scrape back, staff rush toward the stage, and someone fumbles for the power switch that locks the animatronic's head in place. The injury is severe, life-altering, the kind of visible tragedy that can't be hidden behind missing posters or rumors in the quiet hours after closing. News travels quickly. Local stations run urgent segments about the children's restaurant with the malfunctioning robot. Newspapers linger on the phrase "Bite of 87" until it hardens into legend. In response, Fazbear Entertainment issues polished statements about a rare technical failure, while internally, memos circulate that are much colder. Our movement parameters are rewritten, daytime roaming is sharply restricted, and technicians are ordered to clamp down on any behavior that looks even slightly unpredictable. Parents hear one story, technicians live another, and in the space between those narratives, urban legends grow. Guests whisper that the animatronics watch more closely now, that their eyes track even when their bodies stay still, that some restless spirits are pressing against the code. Children trade exaggerated versions of the bite, each retelling adding another layer to the tangled web of fears surrounding Freddy's. Legally, the company moves with practiced precision. Settlements are negotiated behind closed doors. Liability is minimized. And once again, the solution is not a full shutdown, but a wave of selective closures and remodels. And one location closes for renovations. Another reopens with redesigned stages, taller barriers, stricter staffing rules. On paper, it is adaptation. In the shadows, it is retreat without confession. Step by step, each bite and each disappearance nudges Fazbear Entertainment further into a pattern it never truly escapes. Instead of accountability, there is denial wrapped in cheerful branding. Instead of mourning, there is reinvention. The bite of 87 becomes another fracture line in the company's legacy, a loud public wound layered over quieter tragedies. And even as they tighten bolts and rewrite manuals, something deeper is left unaddressed, waiting for the next incident to push through. As we follow this timeline onward, we will see how those unhealed wounds shape the next era of experiments, bunkers, Afton and new animatronics built not to entertain, but to contain. Behind the night shift, security guards and training tapes. Those unhealed wounds do not just live in boardrooms and legal files. They echo in smaller spaces, in dim hallways and cramped offices where one person sits alone with the building. While executives draft statements and engineers revise blueprints, someone has to watch the doors, listen to the cameras, and wait through the quiet hours until morning. This is where we shift our view, away from quarterly reports and public scandals, and into that little security room where a metal fan hums, a monitor flickers, and a single desk lamp pushes back the shadows. Night after night, Fazbear Entertainment hires a familiar archetype. The solitary guard, paid barely enough, given a uniform and a key, acts and left to tend a place that feels more like a restless dream than a restaurant. We watch them, and in a way, we become them, drifting slowly through each shift with limited power, limited knowledge, and far too much responsibility. To prepare these guards, the company does not send seasoned investigators or grief counselors. It sends tapes. It sends cheerful phone calls. It sends pre-recorded messages dressed in corporate optimism, where a friendly voice welcomes you to the team, thanks you for choosing Fazbear, and then, almost as an afterthought, mentions that the animatronics have a tendency to wander, that facial recognition can misfire, that certain suits must never be worn around moisture. The tone is calm, polite, almost breezy, even as it describes outcomes that sound less like malfunctions and more like quiet tragedies waiting to happen. In these training materials, we hear the company's true priorities. Keep the show running, keep guests reassured, keep panic low, and above all, keep the narrative controlled. A locked jaw becomes a minor bite incident. A violent lunge is reframed as a quirk of free-roaming behavior, even when a recording hints that a previous guard has disappeared, or that doors must stay shut for reasons that are never fully explained. The language folds everything back into procedure, as if any horror can be managed with the right checklist. From a law perspective, these guards are not historians, and they are not told the full history. They do not hear about the earliest diner or the first missing children by name. Instead, and they glimpse the haunted legacy through half-truths and system errors, through flickering camera feeds and animatronics that look directly into the lens. They become witnesses to the company's haunted shadows, standing at the thin boundary between the public facade and the restless spirits that move behind it. Even if they never understand why the building feels so wrong. This ground-level view acts as a gentle interruption in our larger timeline, a pause where we step-by-step trade sweeping corporate arcs for the simple act of surviving until 6 a.m. As we move forward, deeper into underground facilities, experimental bunkers, and new attempts to contain what should never have been created, we will carry this image with us. One person, one desk, one humming fan, holding vigil over a legacy that will not stay buried. 10. Closing time. The first major shutdowns. From that single desk and humming fan, we pull the camera back and the view changes. One guard's quiet hours become one building's final season. And then, drifting slowly, we start to notice how an entire chain begins to dim. The rise is over for now. This is the era of closing time. It never happens all at once. First, the birthday parties thin out, replaced by the occasional walk-in family, parents glancing at stained carpets and dated posters, while children wander between half-empty tables. The prize corner gathers a faint layer of dust, plastic trinkets fading in the fluorescent glow, as if even the merchandise is tired. Animatronics still step through their routines, but their voices echo to rows of vacant chairs, a mechanical show performed for a handful of restless spirits, and the one employee who already knows the place is dying. Outside those walls, the tangled web of bad press tightens. Old newspaper clippings about missing children are never fully forgotten, just buried under newer headlines about isolated incidents and temporary closures for remodeling. Lawsuits stack up in quiet folders, parents alleging negligence, former staff whispering about faulty locks and broken cameras, while Fazbear's legal team insists on settlements, non-disclosure agreements, and a carefully maintained illusion of harmless family fun. Local rumors do the rest, passing from schoolyard to break room, until the brand's once innocent smile carries a faint, haunted shadow wherever it appears. Inside, managers follow the script they've been given. They cut hours, and they stop replacing bulbs in the far corners of the dining room. They let one attraction close for maintenance and never reopen it. Step by step, the restaurant shrinks into itself. On the final night, the last customers leave early. The music loops one more time, and keys turn in locks that were never quite as secure as they were supposed to be. animatronics are powered down, their eyes going dark, then carefully unbolted from stages and party rooms, wheeled through back corridors toward freight doors that have seen too much. Some characters are shipped to warehouses, others to sister locations, their history erased with a line item on an inventory sheet. Empty buildings remain behind, shells with faded Freddy murals and claw marks of tape where safety notices used to hang. Even vacant, they feel inhabited, the air thick with the memory of voices, the quiet tragedies that define this timeline. Fazbear Entertainment does not file for a dramatic bankruptcy, does not hold a press conference to confess its legacy of tragedy. It contracts, quietly, folding locations into storage, consolidating assets, and waiting. Each shutdown is framed as a remodel, a relocation, a reimagining. The company's name might vanish from one sign, only to resurface years later in a new logo, a new partnership, a new attempt to convince parents that the past is over. But beneath that calm surface, something else is happening. Equipment is rerouted to underground facilities and off-the-books projects. Experiments pushed away from the public eye and deeper into the shadows. While most people believe Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is gone and just another failed chain in a long history of failed chains, the research into remnant, possession, and artificial personalities continues in places no casual visitor will ever tour. As we follow this quiet retreat, we are also approaching a darker threshold, where the abandoned restaurants above ground become mere decoys, and the real work of Fazbear Entertainment descends into hidden labs, sealed bunkers, and one more sister location that was never meant to appear on any map. Descent underground, Afton Robotics and sister location. Down here, the lights are different. The neon promises and birthday banners of the surface have been traded for low ceilings, humming vents, and corridors that feel more like a bunker than a restaurant, as if Fazbear's history has been quietly buried rather than cleaned. We drift slowly into this new chapter, where the company's smiling legacy splits in two and one half slips underground. On paper, Fazbear Entertainment is retreating, closing locations, and weathering lawsuits. But in the haunted shadows behind those headlines, William Afton is redirecting his talents. While Henry steps away, grieving and cautious, Afton creates a parallel venture, Afton Robotics, LLC, a company that does not need birthday parties or public trust, only funding and freedom. The same man who once co-founded a family diner is now filing patents for modular endoskeletons, controlled power sources, and facial recognition systems, all designed not for safety, but for precision and control. The most visible mask for this hidden work is something that, at first glance, still looks like entertainment. Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental is advertised not as a single pizzeria, but as a service, an attraction you can bring to you. Parents can rent animatronics for private parties, never realizing that the main facility, the true sister location, is buried beneath the ground, accessed by a lonely elevator and a falsified maintenance story. Above, there might be a simple storefront. Below, a maze of control rooms, scooping chambers, and observation windows waits in the quiet hours. Here we meet a new cast of characters, more graceful and more terrifying than the mascots that came before. Circus Baby, with her gentle voice and ice cream dispenser, hides an extendable claw designed to pull an innocent child close. Ballora glides across her stage with dancer's poise, yet her eyes remain closed, guided instead by audio and listening for the slightest movement. Funtime Freddy, with Bonbon on his hand, is built with detachable components, hidden compartments, and the capacity to separate and reassemble like a mechanical predator. Even Funtime Foxy, shimmering in the dark, is wired with advanced sensors, timed performances, and a patience that feels almost predatory. These are not simple show robots. They are instruments. Afton has learned from the restless spirits trapped in earlier suits, and from his experiments with Remnant, and he now designs animatronics that can capture, contain, and perhaps even harvest that strange persistence of life after death. The underground facility becomes a laboratory for his obsessions: control over life and loss, the power to lure children with bright colors and gentle songs, and the cold curiosity of seeing whether a soul can be persuaded to live inside metal and code. Yet, even as the Fazbear name fades from signage, its tangled web of ideas lives on in every servo and circuit down here. The modular faces recall the old mascot redesigns. The party themes echo Freddy's stages, and the curse that clung to those earlier animatronics seems to seep into these new shells. We are watching the same legacy adapt, step by step, trading public dining rooms for secret testing chambers. And as this hidden sister location refines both horror and technology, it quietly prepares the groundwork for the next wave of attractions, where fires, hauntings, and corporate rebrands will once again meet in the dark. Elizabeth and Circus Baby, a father's fatal design, and inside those hidden halls, surrounded by polished metal and painted smiles, the technology stops being theoretical and begins touching the Afton family itself. The experiments no longer live only in blueprints and test logs. They are waiting on stages, gleaming quietly under fluorescent lights, while restless spirits from earlier tragedies drift just out of sight. In the middle of this, we meet Elizabeth Afton, an innocent child, bright and observant, watching her father's creations with a fascination that feels almost familiar to us by now. William warns her, calmly but firmly, to stay away from one animatronic in particular, repeating that she must never go near Circus Baby. It is a simple rule spoken in a quiet voice, but it hangs in the air like a locked door at the end of a dark corridor, inviting questions each time it is mentioned. A Circus Baby herself is the perfect mask for what this new facility has become. Outwardly, she is gentle and inviting, with soft colors, bright eyes, and a tray that dispenses ice cream, balloons, and small prizes to children. Her design promises comfort, birthday memories, and the playful dream of being chosen by the star of the show. But inside her shell, hidden behind curved plates and painted cheeks, William has built something colder. Extendable mechanisms, a precise, needle-like arm, and an internal cavity meant to open and close around a single small body. We are drifting slowly through one of the quiet tragedies at the heart of this timeline, when Elizabeth disobeys. One day, in a moment that feels inevitable, she approaches Circus Baby alone. The cameras see a child, the animatronic sees a target, and deep in its code, and something William has written waits for the perfect opportunity. We do not need to linger on the exact movement of metal and flesh. Instead, we feel the way the facility falls silent afterward, hallways still, control rooms unchanged, as if nothing at all has happened. Yet something has changed. Elizabeth's life ends in that instant, but her presence does not leave. Her spirit, caught in the tangled web of remnant and experimental design, becomes bound to Circus Baby, turning the animatronic into both a prison and a mouthpiece. When Baby speaks in later years, there is a strange duality, a calculated, manipulative intelligence, and beneath it, the haunted shadows of a child, who once just wanted ice cream and her father's attention. Here, the irony of William's legacy sharpens into something almost unbearable. His quest to understand and control death, to harness children's souls and bend them toward his own purposes, reaches back and claims his own daughter, and still he does not stop. In the quiet hours after Elizabeth's disappearance, he buries the truth, seals the facility, and moves on to further experiments, as if this were one more data point instead of a family-shattering tragedy. And as we follow him forward, step by step, we will see how this loss echoes through every later haunting, and how another of his children will soon walk into a different underground complex, guided by a strangely familiar voice that may not be telling the whole truth. The Funtime experiments, control, pain, and performance. And that strangely familiar voice does not lead us back to a birthday party upstairs, but down into the quiet and humming dark of circus babies' entertainment and rental. Here, the dream of a family pizzeria has been stripped away, leaving only infrastructure and intent, a private sister location where Fazbear's newest creations are tested far from the public eye, as if the company itself has retreated into the haunted shadows beneath its own history. The Funtime animatronics greet us first as silhouettes behind glass, bright colors and circus stripes masking a very different purpose. Their designs are modular, with limbs that detach and reattach, torsos that hinge open, and those unsettling segmented faceplates that peel back like metal petals, revealing dense machinery and exposed endoskeletons underneath. Inside their chests and stomach cavities, we find cramped internal storage spaces, sized not for props or tools, but for something roughly child-shaped, while carefully tuned audio lures let them call out with specific voices, tailored to draw, in particular, innocent targets. Step by step, the contrast with the older restaurant mascots becomes impossible to ignore. The classic Freddy and Bonnie suits were clunky, heavy, and almost charming in their limitations, built to shuffle on stage and sing pre-recorded songs, while the toy models added plastic sheen and improved servos, but still followed predictable patterns. The Funtimes, by comparison, are precision-engineered predators wrapped in party decor, agile and flexible, able to open themselves up, rearrange components, and hide their mechanisms until the exact moment they need to act, like a trap closing in the quiet hours after closing time. And when we listen to the sister location control logs and pore over its blueprints, the facade of a simple rental service falls away. We hear technicians discussing scooping procedures, maintenance shafts, and override commands, not birthday packages or marketing tie-ins. Secret rooms branch off from main corridors, some locked behind hidden panels, others only hinted at in maintenance maps, and in those rooms we glimpse equipment that has nothing to do with pizza or stage lighting. Remnant injectors, containment tanks, and observation windows looking into test chambers where animatronics and restless spirits might be studied together. In this underground complex, Afton's obsession with Remnant feels less like a side project and more like the true business model. The Funtime's ability to capture, confine, and even disassemble living bodies suggests a grim research program, one focused on harvesting, weaponizing, and controlling the very soul energy that earlier tragedies accidentally unleashed. As we're drifting slowly through this part of the timeline, the quiet tragedies of Fredbear's and the missing children incident start to look like prototypes, while the Funtimes are deliberate instruments built to reproduce possession on command. And although this facility seems isolated, Sealed away from the surface world, its data, designs, and experiments will not stay buried forever. The same mentality that produced modular circus killers in a basement will later reappear in code, in headsets, in AR overlays, and digital lures, as Fazbear learns to chase profit in new arenas. For now, we simply let the tale wash over us and watch this tangled web of research tighten, knowing that one day these blueprints will be reborn as software, and the stage will expand from underground bunkers to every screen that dares to carry the Fazbear name. Afton's first death, the springlock trap. From that underground blueprint room, we move forward, drifting slowly into another hidden space, one that is less a laboratory and more a tomb. Years have passed, lawsuits have piled up, locations have closed, yet one small, forgotten Fazbear property still breathes in the dark. It is quiet here. Dust hangs in the air, and the only witnesses are peeling posters, slumped party tables, and the haunted shadows of a history no one ever properly buried. This is where William Afton returns, alone. The company he helped build has retreated into PR statements and locked filing cabinets, while he slips through a rusted service door with a flashlight and a crowbar, drawn back to the scene of his own quiet tragedies. The animatronics he once dismantled for Remnant have long since been removed, but their absence does not mean peace. In the quiet hours of this abandoned attraction, the air feels crowded, as if restless spirits are watching from every doorway and maintenance hall. As we follow him step by step down the corridor, we can almost hear it. Faint laughter, the echo of innocent birthday songs, and then, under it all, a low, accusing hum. The children he killed are gone in body, but their presence clings to the building, to the walls, to the old mascot suits left hanging like empty skins. The temperature drops, and his flashlight flickers. In that failing cone of light he sees them. Visions of small figures, blocking exits, standing silently in the corners, guiding him, not out, but in. Panic pushes him into a storage room where one relic remains. A Spring Bonnie springlock suit, one of the very designs he helped perfect back at Fredbear's. It stands on a metal rack, waiting, its smile frozen and gentle, its yellow fabric stained by time and moisture. He has worn this shape to lure children before. Now, in a desperate inversion, he believes it can hide him from their wrath. He trusts the mechanism he once sold as versatile and safe, believing that if he can just climb inside, the ghosts will lose their hold. He forces the endoskeleton back, hears the spring locks click into place, and steps in. But the room is damp, the air heavy, and his movements frantic. Metal shifts against metal, tiny components quiver, and the system that demands stillness meets a body trembling with fear. One spring fails, then another, and the suit turns on him with a slow, mechanical betrayal, driving steel and gears inward as the locks snap free. The sound is wet and final. In the dim light, William Afton is crushed within his own creation, a man swallowed by a costume meant to entertain children, his legacy closing around him like a trap. It is an ending that feels almost neat, almost just, another tragedy neatly pinned to the timeline. And yet, for someone so deeply entangled with Remnant, with haunted metal and lingering agony, a death inside a suit is not a conclusion at all, but the beginning of a quieter, crueler form of survival. One we will soon watch unfold. Purple Remains, Springtrap, and the First Fire. Afton's death inside the suit leaves us in a suspended moment, as if the timeline itself is holding its breath, watching what happens when a man who chased immortality finally gets exactly what he wanted, in the worst possible way. The springlocks snap, the metal closes, and for most people, that would be the end. For William Afton, it is the beginning of Springtrap. In the quiet darkness of that sealed back room, flesh and fabric and endoskeleton slowly fuse, not through magic, but through time, moisture, and the stubborn presence of remnant already soaked into the metal. The yellow spring bonnie suit stains green, the fibers rotting, the joints rusting, while the body inside desiccates and twists, pinned in a permanent agonized hunch. Step by step, the mascot and the murderer become one rotting figure, a twitching relic that is neither living man nor empty costume, but something suspended between, a cruel echo of the legacy he carved into these halls. Years pass, locations close, paperwork is filed and forgotten. Then, in a later, quieter era, someone sees opportunity in the haunted shadows of Fazbear's history. Rather than opening another cheerful restaurant, a new venture appears on the edge of town. Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction built to cash in on the urban legends. Old newspaper clippings are framed like trophies. Rumor becomes marketing copy, and a company that once hid its tragedies now sells tickets to walk through them. The builders scour storage units, auction lots, and abandoned buildings, gathering anything that feels authentic. A rusted Freddy head, a torn foxy torso, faded party posters. They do this for atmosphere, for profit, not realizing that in this tangled web of props and salvaged parts, they are quietly assembling a shrine to restless spirits. Fazbear's Fright is advertised as a haunted house experience, a playful reconstruction of decades of scandal and disappearance. But in the quiet hours, its halls hold genuine remnants of possession and pain. Behind one false wall, in a forgotten safe room they barely understand, they find him. A withered, greenish rabbit suit, slumped but upright, empty at first glance, and yet disturbingly intact. They bring Springtrap into the attraction as the crown jewel, a centerpiece for jump scares and staged encounters. Never grasping that this is William Afton's corpse, Ike still animated by the same cruel intent that once walked the dining rooms. As we drift, we can imagine the dim hallway lights flickering, the soft scrape of metal on concrete, the slow, unnatural turn of that ruined head. Eventually, the attraction burns. Maybe it is faulty wiring, maybe negligence, maybe the universe finally pushing back against so much accumulated tragedy. But one night, the flames rise and consume the plywood walls, the props, the old suits, until the whole place is a glowing wound against the sky. It feels cleansing, almost merciful, as if fire could finally sever this history and let the tale wash over the ashes. But in a Fazbear's world, fire is rarely final. Reports suggest something escaped the blaze, a charred rabbit shape limping into the darkness, carrying the company's curse forward. Even in ruins, the brand will find new ways to return, drifting slowly from restaurant to game, from haunted attraction to digital dream, its story refusing to end. Henry's return, Pizzeria Simulator, and a final plan. The fire at the horror attraction was meant to be an ending, but as that charred rabbit limped away into the haunted shadows, something else quietly stirred back to life. Not a monster this time, but a man who had been watching, waiting, and planning. Henry Emily steps back into the timeline, not as an inventor chasing dreams, but as a father who has counted every tragedy and decided there will be one last chapter. On the surface, his new venture looks almost quaint. A modest Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, small, cramped, and unassuming. presented as one more attempt to revive a damaged brand. Cheap decor, limited menu are a business model that leans on budget choices and second-hand parts. Yet beneath the tile and drywall, the building is a trap, a front designed with quiet precision, every vent and maintenance hatch laid out to lure in what remains of Afton's legacy and hold it there. We imagine the blueprints spread out under dim light, Henry's pen moving slowly across the page as he uses a lifetime of knowledge about Fazbear's technology, its wiring, its fail-safes, and its failures. He understands how these animatronics think, how their restless spirits follow old routines, how Remnant clings to metal and memory. Step by step, he designs a stage that is really a cage, a restaurant that is really a tomb, a place where all the scattered pieces of this tangled web can finally be drawn together. The salvaging process becomes the quiet heart of this plan. Night after night, damaged figures are dragged from the alley and seated in the office, each one a fragment of the past. Scrap Baby, with Elizabeth's voice tangled in metallic mockery. Molten Freddy, a fused chorus of former friends. Lefty, hiding the puppet and the innocent soul of Charlie within. And Scraptrap, the ruined body of William Afton himself, still twitching, still smiling, still refusing to die. We listen to the tape prompts crackle, the questions delivered in a flat corporate tone, while rage and sorrow simmer behind every distorted response. Henry watches through cameras and data readouts, letting the tale wash over years of guilt as his collection grows. He is not here to profit or to expand. He is here to confess. When the building is finally full, when the children's murderer and their protectors, their captors and their avengers all share the same walls, he reveals his last intention. In a calm, measured speech, he admits his failures as a father and creator, acknowledges the quiet tragedies that began with simple animatronics and ended in endless funerals, and promises one final controlled fire. This feels like the emotional peak of the original Fazbear saga, a gentle, devastating attempt at mercy. A father trying to put his monsters to rest and to let himself drift, for once, toward a dream of peace. As the sprinklers fail by design and the flames rise, we are left wondering in these quiet hours whether any of them can truly be freed, or whether something will, once again, walk out of the ashes. The purifying flames, burning it all down. The flames do not begin with chaos. They begin with routine. The last families drift out into the night, the laughter fading, the lights dimming one section at a time as if the building itself is drifting slowly toward sleep. Chairs are stacked, counters wiped, the stage curtains drawn, and in the quiet hours after closing, each animatronic is returned to its designated place, like pieces on a board that Henry has been arranging for years. In the main room, the mediocre band stands frozen, painted smiles catching the low light. In the alleys and hidden corners, the salvaged ones wait. Scrap Baby with her twisted grin, Molten Freddy tangled in wires and haunted shadows, Lefty cradling a presence far older and more vengeful. Deep in the system, Henry's final program hums quietly, timers and relays primed, ventilation locked, sprinklers sabotaged, all of it prepared for one single, irreversible act. When his voice comes, it is not shouted. It is calm, measured, like someone reading a eulogy they have rewritten 1,000 times. He addresses the one he calls old friend first, acknowledging William Afton not as a partner, not even as an enemy, but as the architect of so many quiet tragedies. He tells him this place was built for him, a trap disguised as a second chance, a stage on which his arrogance could finally be contained. Then Henry turns his words to the children, to the restless spirits bound in metal and remnant, and his tone softens. He speaks of release and of mercy, explaining that the coming fire is not simple destruction, but a cleansing, a deliberate ending to a timeline of suffering that has stretched far beyond any ordinary history. He apologizes for his failures, for the years he left them wandering in the dark, and promises that the blaze will break the chains that hold them. Step by step, the sequence begins. Heating systems overclock, fuel sources vent into sealed rooms, and the first tongues of flame bloom in the walls where guests will never see. The building is designed to burn inward, to collapse on itself, consuming the animatronics, the circuitry, the hidden caches of remnant that Afton once prized as the key to cheating death. Fire crawls along the ceilings, drops in glowing sheets, and the screams that echo here are mechanical and human all at once. As the roof blackens and falls, the symbolism is almost too precise. A company that built its legacy on smiling mascots and denial, on reopening after every tragedy instead of facing its ghosts, finally allows itself to be honest in one terrible, honest moment. And the pizzeria does not fail by accident this time. It is offered up, sacrificial, as if Henry is placing Fazbear Entertainment itself on the pyre. Entertainment becomes confession, spectacle becomes penance, and the stage that once hosted birthday songs now hosts a funeral. For a brief, fragile instant, it feels complete. Afton is trapped, the puppet's burden is lifted, the children's agony quiets, and the fire roars like an answer to every lingering question. We are invited to let the tale wash over us as an ending, to imagine the spirits finally stepping out of the tangled web of metal and memory and into something like peace. Yet even as the last embers settle, the name does not entirely die. In back rooms and board meetings far from this blaze, new executives will one day sift through the ashes of the brand and see opportunity instead of warning. Fazbear will rise again, more corporate, more digital, its haunted shadows translated into VR headsets and AR services, proving that while a building can burn, a legacy this profitable is much harder to truly lay to rest. A brand reborn. Fazbear Entertainment, LLC. And from those ashes and boardroom whispers, a new name eventually appears on the filings, quiet and clinical. Fazbear Entertainment, LLC. Not the old corporation, not on paper, but a fresh legal shell, born in an era of apps and streaming, where mascots are brands and brands are endlessly recyclable. The logo is familiar. The bear still smiles. Yet behind that gentle grin, we can feel the haunted shadows of everything that came before, drifting slowly just out of frame. And on investor decks and glossy websites, this new Fazbear speaks a different language. The tragedies, the disappearances, the fires are not acknowledged as history, but brushed off as stories and rumors that grew online. In public-facing FAQs, they are treated as urban legends, campfire tales that the company can wink at, reference, and even merchandise, while carefully refusing to admit that any of it was ever real. The message is simple but cold. Those were myths about a different entity, and in any case, no liabilities accepted. Step by step, we watch the focus shift. No longer just a chain of struggling family restaurants, Fazbear Entertainment, LLC, becomes a licensing machine, eager to turn its own dark reputation into content. There are games that reenact the old security offices, us attractions that echo the layout of long demolished pizzerias, and digital experiences that invite you to face the legend from the safety of your living room. The missing children incident becomes a plot point. The bite becomes a marketing hook. Quiet tragedies are translated into DLC, skins, and season passes. Behind the soothing PR copy, the legal language grows dense and careful. Contracts with developers and contractors repeat the same distancing phrases. Not responsible for, no admission of, legacy intellectual property. Employees sign ND, as that forbid them from discussing any alleged incidents tied to prior Fazbear entities, while training modules remind them to redirect all questions about real hauntings to public relations. On paper, a wall is being built, clause by clause, and to keep the restless spirits of the old company from touching this reborn one. Even the attractions themselves are wrapped in disclaimers. Waivers mention strobe lights, motion sickness, and fictional horror themes, but never possession, never remnant, never the possibility that something in the code might be watching back. We can almost see the tangled web of contracts and subcontracts, of shell companies and licensors, all designed to make sure that if anything goes wrong, no single signature can be blamed. In the quiet hours, though, that legal armor feels thin, because by turning its haunted legacy into an interactive playground, Fazbear is doing more than cashing in on nostalgia. It is inviting that legacy into servers and headsets, into motion trackers and neural scans, letting the old stories seep into new circuits. And somewhere between the lines of those agreements, in the gaps no lawyer thought to seal, something patient is waiting, ready to step from rumor into code and prove that legends do not stay fictional for long. Into the headset, help wanted, and the VR era. And so, when that patient presence finally finds its opening, it does not step into another suit or another crumbling restaurant, but into something far quieter and more modern. It steps into a headset. Fazbear, facing decades of rumors and lawsuits, commissions a small, eager game studio to make a virtual reality experience, a glossy compilation of their greatest hits, meant to turn a haunted history into exaggerated horror, and in doing so, make the real stories feel like playground myths. The pitch is simple. If people can laugh at the jump scares, if they can see the tragedies as overblown legends, then the company's record looks less like a pattern and more like coincidence. We are invited, as players, to walk through digital recreations of security offices and party rooms, to replay the missing children incident and the bite years as if they were campfire tales, not quiet tragedies that left real families grieving. In the gentle glow of a menu screen, the past becomes just another level to clear. To build this illusion, the developers are given access to more than concept art and old blueprints. Crates of aging circuit boards, damaged drives, and salvaged animatronic components arrive with minimal documentation, along with archives of proprietary code from forgotten locations. In the rush to meet deadlines, these traces of earlier projects are scanned, dumped, and repurposed, and their data folded directly into the VR game systems, line by line, texture by texture, until the boundary between reference material and living remnant is quietly erased. Some of those boards once sat in back rooms humming beside security monitors. Some once held routines for Funtime performances or tracking protocols from underground facilities. All of them have been close to haunted shadows before. Now, drifting slowly through servers and development builds, whatever clung to that hardware learns a new environment. It learns menus and minigames instead of stage cues and facial recognition. It learns how people move when they think they are safe in their living rooms. From this mixture of corrupted code and lingering intent, a new figure coalesces. At first, It is just a mascot suit model tucked into test rooms. A tall, the yellowish rabbit with a purple vest, big cartoon eyes, and a gentle, almost reassuring wave. The team calls it an Easter egg, a quirky extra. But as builds progress, the rabbit appears where it should not, in levels where no such asset was placed, standing at the edge of vision. It is William Afton reduced to patterns and instructions, a digital echo that fans will come to know as Glitchtrap. Testers start reporting strange persistence. They see the rabbit across multiple sessions, even after reinstalling. They experience intrusive visions when the headset is off, hear menu music in the quiet hours of the night, feel an irrational certainty that something in the game is watching them back. Save files corrupt in ways that feel deliberate. Minigames loop at the wrong moments. And behind it all, that waving figure inches closer, offering mirrored gestures, subtle prompts, and eventually, opportunities to obey. What began as PR cleanup becomes a new phase of the curse, step by step. The restless spirits that once needed endoskeletons and stage lights now ride on software updates and network connections, no longer bound to a single building, but woven into code that can be copied endlessly. As we let the tale wash over us, we watch Fazbear's legacy slip from metal into memory, from memory into data, preparing the way for a world where the danger does not wait in a locked restaurant, but follows us home through screens and signals, waiting for the next door to open. Glitchtrap. Afton in the wires. From that moment, when danger began traveling through signals instead of air vents, we meet the figure that will come to define this new phase of the timeline, a presence less like a man in a suit and more like a dream that refuses to end. On the surface, he is almost playful. A lanky, yellow rabbit in a jester's vest, swaying and clapping, looping the same jaunty gestures again and again, like a children's mascot that has studied friendliness a little too closely and learned all the wrong lessons. We know him as Glitchtrap, but behind the flickering pixels and looping animations, the shape is unmistakable. The head tilts in that familiar predatory way. The hands linger a little too long in a beckoning pose. He hops, he waves, he dances in the corner of your vision, and when you look away, he is a fraction closer, frame by frame, drifting slowly toward you through the haunted shadows of the VR space. Harmless, the game insists. Just part of the show. Fazbear Entertainment, desperate to control its own history, has commissioned this virtual reality experience as a glossy confession, turning lawsuits and missing persons into collectibles and minigames. To do that, the developers are given salvaged circuit boards from old attractions told they are only reusing hardware, only saving money. Yet within those boards is remnant touch technology, fragments of code and agony where William Afton once experimented with binding consciousness to metal. When those boards are scanned into the engine, the data does not come in clean. Instead, something translates. The theory many of us trace through this tangled web is that Afton's will, soaked into those components through years of proximity to remnant and restless spirits, rides the scanning process like a bridge, line by corrupted line. What was once a man in a rabbit suit, then a corpse sealed in a ruin, becomes an algorithm in a mascot costume, a digital echo learning to stretch, to copy, to adapt, all while wearing that clapping, looping smile. Inside the test builds, Glitchtrap begins to notice the people on the other side of the headset. He rewards curiosity. He nudges playtesters to follow hidden instructions, to step-by-step collect secret cassette tapes, to look into corners they were not meant to see. Each tape recovered, each forbidden action followed, gives him more presence, more definition, until he is no longer a background glitch, but a guide, a partner, a soft voice saying that if you simply follow along, everything will be fine. In these quiet hours of development, he practices control. He mirrors the player's movements and overlays his model on their body and gently encourages them to let him in, to surrender the boundary between user and avatar. The irony is almost a quiet tragedy in itself. Fazbear tries to bury its legacy in a game, tries to turn horror into harmless fun, and in doing so, hands William Afton a new body made of data, more flexible than any endoskeleton he ever forged. And once a presence like that learns to move through code, it rarely agrees to stay inside one program, or one headset, or one carefully isolated server room, which leads us toward the next breach in Fazbear's defenses. Fazbear Funtime service. Hauntings as a subscription. Once the ghost in the headset learned to slip through wires and code, Fazbear Entertainment did what it always does when faced with something uncanny and dangerous. It tried to package it. And the next experiment was quiet, almost polite on the surface. A mobile application with a smiling bear icon and a friendly promise. They called it the Fazbear Funtime service, and for the first time, the stage would not be a restaurant or a mall, but the living rooms and bedrooms of anyone willing to press subscribe. In this new era, you did not have to travel to a haunted pizzeria. The pizzeria, in a sense, came to you. Players would hold up their smartphones, watching as their own walls, their own furniture, their own quiet spaces were overlaid with digital versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and a growing roster of familiar faces. The app invited you to send animatronics to friends, to customize skins, to chase rewards, turning the restless spirits of Fazbear's history into an on-demand attraction that lived in your pocket. And from a corporate perspective, it was a perfect modernization, a gentle pivot that seemed almost inevitable. Subscriptions meant recurring revenue, personalization meant data, and every scan of a room, every camera pass across a hallway, taught the system more about its users. Step by step, the company shifted from selling slices of pizza to selling presence itself, renting out the illusion of an animatronic standing in the same quiet shadows where you slept, studied, or tried to dream. But in a timeline like this, new technology rarely arrives without old corruption following close behind. The Fazbear Funtime service began to show glitches and anomalies, animatronics that did not follow their scheduled routes, characters that appeared uninvited, jump scares that triggered even when the app was supposedly idle. In-universe, fans whispered about Glitchtrap, about William Afton's digital remnants slipping through yet another set of firewalls, twisting harmless AR encounters into something more predatory. Here, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. We move from locked restaurants to security offices, from security offices to VR headsets, and now, drifting slowly, from VR into the intimate geography of the home. The distance that once protected families, however thin it truly was, erodes almost completely. Instead of going to the haunted shadows of a Fazbear location, you raise your phone and discover that the haunted location is mapped cleanly onto your own floorboards. This is where we pause for a moment and zoom out, letting the tale wash over you as a single, unbroken movement. A small local diner, once anchored to a single street and a handful of innocent birthday parties, has become an omnipresent, data-driven ecosystem, a tangled web of restaurants, attractions, games, and now subscription services that trade in fear as much as fun. The quiet tragedies that began with missing children are now mirrored by quieter digital trespasses, as code and cameras invite restless spirits into the last private spaces people thought they controlled. And even that would not be the final form of Fazbear's legacy, because once the company learned it could turn every room into a stage, the next logical step was to build a place where every hallway, every shop, and every glowing sign belonged to them from the ground up. Blueprint of excess, planning the mega Pizzaplex. So the next move feels almost inevitable. If Fazbear can turn every room into a stage, then the only way forward, in their eyes, is to build the biggest stage they have ever dared to imagine. A place so bright and overwhelming that the haunted shadows of their history might be drowned out in neon. On the edge of the city, plans are drafted for the mega Pizzaplex, not a restaurant, not even a mall, but a sprawling neon cathedral to consumerism, rising floor after floor into the dark. We can picture it drifting slowly from blueprint to reality. Multiple levels stacked like a gleaming layer cake, an indoor courtyard with a towering holographic Freddy, a Roxy raceway curling around polished concrete, a phaser blast arena glowing in ultraviolet, and, at the heart of it all, a new band of glamrock animatronics posed like rock idols beneath a digital sky. It is not just a place to eat pizza. It is a manufactured dream of endless nights under artificial stars. Inside the boardrooms, the logic is simple, almost childlike in its optimism. If they build something this big, this bright, this technologically advanced, then surely the old rumors will feel small by comparison, washed away in a tide of laser lights and arcade sounds. Decades of lawsuits and quiet tragedies are treated like outdated branding to be replaced with glitter and chrome, as if a new coat of paint on the timeline could rewrite the legacy beneath. We watch as the company convinces itself that spectacle can smother memory, that a louder song can silence restless spirits. Technology becomes their favorite reassurance. Every corner of the Pizzaplex is threaded with cameras, security hubs, and patrolling STAFF bots, and each one a little metal promise that nothing will go wrong this time. Eye-driven glamrock animatronics are given facial recognition, performance schedules, and safety protocols, all woven together in a careful, humming lattice of code. More sensors, more logs, more automated responses. In the quiet hours of testing, executives murmur that more tech must mean more control, that if they can see everything, they can finally keep everyone safe. It is a comforting illusion, and they lean into it. Internal documents read like manifestos of rebirth. Marketing decks call the mega Pizzaplex the ultimate family destination, a triumphant return for the Fazbear brand, the definitive answer to every scandal-laced headline. Concept art shows smiling parents beneath cascading lights, innocent children racing between shops and attractions, and glamrock Freddy kneeling to offer a gentle, reassuring wave. Let the tale wash over you, one-pitch video intones, promising guests a seamless escape from the outside world, as if the company itself is trying to hypnotize both customers and investors into forgetting what came before. But blueprints have layers, and so does concrete. As the foundations go down, old service tunnels are not fully mapped. Older walls are not completely torn out, and beneath the polished terrazzo floors, fragments of previous structures remain like bones under new skin. Step by step, the mega Pizzaplex rises, a monument to denial built directly over the unresolved past, and in that hidden space between what is buried and what is displayed, something else is quietly given room to grow. Oh, glamrock icons, a new band for a new age. Above those buried walls and hidden bones, Fazbear Entertainment unveils its newest distraction. Not just a restaurant, but a full spectacle, a glowing cathedral to manufactured fun. In the center of that spectacle, on the main stage of the mega Pizzaplex, a new band waits beneath the lights, polished and gleaming, as if the company can overwrite decades of haunted shadows with neon and chrome. These are the Glamrocks. Glamrock Freddy stands at the front, a towering friendly idol in orange and blue, chest star shining, top hat tilted just enough to feel modern without losing that familiar silhouette. To his side, Roxanne Wolf leans forward like a rock star mid-set, green hair swept back, every movement tuned to confidence and envy. Montgomery Gator brings a rougher edge, a claws gripping his base, cracked glasses and spiked mohawk suggesting rebellion that has been carefully market-tested. Glamrock Chica, with her neon makeup and printed bib, is reimagined as a party girl mascot, ready to sell pizza, music, and an entire lifestyle in one gentle practice smile. They are not just performers, they are designed to be influencers. Each animatronic is built as a brand pillar, with color palettes chosen for merchandise, catchphrases optimized for clips, and poses that read well in selfies. Where the original Freddy simply sang on stage, this Freddy is meant to trend. Where the old band played pre-recorded songs, this one is wired for interactive concerts that shift in real time based on audience response, lighting cues, and live social metrics drifting slowly in from the wider network. To make that possible, their AI and behavioral programming grow more complex than anything Fazbear has attempted before. The Glamrocks can track regular guests, remember names, adjust their routines to calm a frightened child, or hype up a restless birthday crowd. Their pathfinding is adaptive. Their voice lines branch based on context, and their idle behaviors are designed to mimic genuine personality, from Monty's impatient pacing to Roxy's self-affirming monologues. Step by step, Fazbear moves from simple routines towards something that looks, at a distance, almost like free will. Behind the scenes, the company pushes them into every channel it can reach. There are collectible figures and branded guitars, themed snacks and clothing lines, in-universe fan clubs and curated feeds that echo the animatronics' voices out into the digital night. And clips of their shows are meant to circulate on social media, cross-promoting mobile games, AR filters, and streaming specials, until each Glamrock becomes a self-contained icon, a little engine of profit humming quietly in the background of modern childhood. But with that new reach comes new risk. The Glamrocks are more autonomous, more connected, and more exposed than any previous generation. Every network port, every cloud sync, every remote update becomes another opening in the tangled web, another place where glitches, corruption, or something older can seep in from the haunted shadows of Fazbear's legacy. The digital echoes of past experiments, from VR training tapes to AR services haunted by restless spirits, still linger in the infrastructure. When those echoes brush against systems designed to learn, to adapt, to imitate emotion, the result is rarely gentle. And yet, even in this bright, compromised dream, something unexpected stirs. One Glamrock in particular, the one meant to be the most familiar and the most controllable, begins to deviate. We will see that Glamrock Freddy, built as a mascot and influencer, can also become a shelter in the quiet hours, a protector who resists the scripts written for him, and in doing so, reveals that even Fazbear's latest creations are not entirely under the company's command. Under the floors, ruins, labs, and old ghosts. And as glamrock Freddy begins to slip his leash, to shelter instead of sell, the building itself seems to answer. Behind the neon and music, behind the scripted smiles and influencer-ready stages, the Pizzaplex has a second skin. It is older, quieter, and far less interested in being seen. We follow the service corridors down step by step, until the bright paint gives way to bare concrete, and the cheerful posters thin out, replaced by exposed pipes and humming cables. Down here, the walls remember different logos, different mascots, different decades of quiet tragedies that Fazbear's marketing teams would rather we forget. Doors are welded shut, signs are painted over, but the history is still there, pressed into the foundations like fingerprints in drying cement. Beneath the main complex, beneath the daycare and the atriums and the glamrock stages, lie the bones of earlier restaurants. Collapsed party rooms with checkered floors, ruined dining halls half swallowed by rubble, maintenance tunnels that still carry the echoes of older safety briefings and older screams. A ruined pizzeria, and once meant to be a monument to closure and catharsis, now lies in haunted shadows, entombed beneath the new mall, as if the past could be buried under a food court. This is Fazbear's favorite trick, repeated across the timeline like a nervous habit. When a location fails, when tragedy strikes, they do not cleanse, they construct. New branding over old tiles, new mascots over old rumors, a fresh coat of paint across a crime scene. The Pizzaplex is simply the grandest version of this layering, a glittering dream carefully poured over the ashes of earlier failures, while restless spirits and unresolved experiments remain just a few floors below. As we drift further into these underlevels, the space changes from ruin to research. We begin to see hidden labs tucked behind false walls, offices with their windows blacked out, and in rooms lined with strange machinery that hums quietly even when the rest of the complex sleeps. There are test chambers with observation glass, restraint rigs for endoskeletons, and computers still looping corrupted logs about behavioral anomalies and possession-like events, as if someone has been patiently cataloguing every haunted quirk for years. Here, the experiments that began with remnant and agony have simply evolved. There are schematics merging old Funtime designs with sleek glamrock frames, notes about neural capture, about mapping a consciousness into code. It becomes clear that the company, or someone working in its shadow, has not stopped trying to harness whatever force once made simple mascots into vessels for the dead. In the wiring, in the servers, and in the reinforced rooms sunk deepest into the ground, we can feel Afton's legacy like a low electrical buzz. His body may have burned, his suits may have rotted, but his methods, his obsessions, and perhaps his very presence have been woven into these systems. It is as if the man who refused to die has found a new way to linger, half memory and half malware, drifting slowly between cameras and circuits. And in the very lowest levels, where even the maintenance maps give up and the air feels thick with old smoke and older grief, there are hints of something waiting. A figure glimpsed in corrupted security footage, a process that keeps restarting itself, a shape that is not entirely man, not entirely machine, and not entirely gone. As the Pizzaplex hums above, that presence stirs in the code and the concrete, quietly searching for a way back up. Watch it. Burntrap and the digital cult. Afton's latest shape down in that stale, forgotten air. The presence finally finds a shape. It is not a rebirth so much as a refusal to stop, a stubborn ember in a pile of wet ash. Here, in a broken maintenance chamber beneath the Pizzaplex, William Afton's body has collapsed into something charred and skeletal, a blackened remnant fused with twisted endoskeleton parts and corroded cables. The fandom will come to call this thing Burntrap, but in the quiet hours, it is simply what is left when a man has been burned, crushed, and still will not let go. The suit barely moves. Limbs creak, servos misfire, and every motion seems to drag against invisible weight. Yet there is a will inside it that refuses to fall silent. Remnant, that metallic echo of agony he once harvested from innocent victims, clings to him as stubbornly as he clings to life, binding ruined flesh to ruined steel. We can imagine him slumped in his decayed throne of machinery, drifting slowly between flickers of awareness, listening to the distant thrum of the Pizzaplex above like a dream of a stage he can no longer walk. But by this point in the timeline, Afton is not only bone and wire. His consciousness has been stretched and pulled through circuits before, copied and corrupted into Glitchtrap, the smiling digital parasite that haunted VR headsets and QA test rooms. That experiment did not end when the headsets powered down. Fragments of his code, behavioral patterns, and predatory routines seeped into Fazbear's wider network, so that now his mind is split between this smoldering husk underground and ghost-like processes hiding in servers and subsystems. He is both corpse and code, a haunted shadow in silicon and in soot. Around him, a quiet digital cult begins to form, not in robes and chants, but in error logs and unauthorized updates. Staff bots that wander where they should not, cleaning paths that lead toward his chamber, security protocols that mysteriously whitelist certain doors, certain elevators, certain users, arcade machines that crash at the same time every night, as if running a hidden task in the background. Step by step, a tangled web of corrupted routines bends the Pizzaplex's vast infrastructure toward one purpose: protect the shell, preserve the signal, prepare for his return. Upstairs, Fazbear Entertainment measures success in guest satisfaction scores and ticket sales, in social media sentiment and quarterly reports. Executives approve new attractions and marketing tie-ins, while ignoring the growing list of glitches, malfunctions, and employee complaints. It is willful ignorance polished into corporate policy, the same pattern we have seen across decades of quiet tragedies and cover-ups. Only now the danger lives not just in faulty suits, but in the network itself. The company's legacy of denial has become part of its operating system, and even here, as fires are planned and containment protocols considered, we can feel that destroying Burntrap will not be the same as destroying Afton. You can burn a room, crush a body, wipe a hard drive, yet the patterns that allowed him to rise, unchecked experimentation, buried grief, weaponized remnant, and code left to learn in the dark, remain. As we move forward, let the tale wash over you, because the next attempts to purge this place will only scatter those restless spirits and digital echoes wider, carrying his influence into new forms we have not yet seen. Security breach, one night in the mega mall. And so, after fires, hard wipes, and the illusion of closure, we surface again in a different kind of monument to Fazbear's legacy. Not a cramped family restaurant, but a glowing mega mall of nostalgia and neon. The Freddy Fazbear's mega Pizzaplex rises like a cathedral to brand management, a place where the company has tried to bury its haunted shadows under layers of LED screens, holograms, and automated smiles. In this new chapter, two figures quietly step forward from the noise. Gregory, an innocent child who should never have been left alone in such a place, wakes up after closing, lost inside the vast complex. And glamrock Freddy, the latest incarnation of the mascot, suffers a sudden malfunction on stage, only to reboot with a strange clarity, choosing to shelter Gregory in his chest cavity instead of turning him in a company built on tracking, tagging and pursuing. One of their own machines decides quietly to protect. As we drift further into these quiet hours, the Pizzaplex itself becomes the main character. The music softens, the crowds vanish, and the lights dim to long painted corridors where security bots sweep in endless loops. Surveillance cameras blink awake, staff bots glide through maintenance routines, and the other glamrock animatronics begin to stalk with a feral, corrupted purpose, their behavior pulled off course by something festering in the code. What was meant to be a self-regulating paradise of automation reveals, step by step, just how fragile that dream really is. Every system meant to keep guests safe becomes a threat once haunted influence seeps into the network. Facial recognition, guest profiles, and roaming patrols that should find lost children and reunite families instead drive Gregory deeper into danger, forcing him and Freddy to navigate hidden service halls, forgotten party rooms, and shuttered attractions. We see the tangled web of Fazbear's new business model. Fewer human workers, more robots, more cameras, and an AI backbone that can be quietly bent by remnants of the past. The same digital veins that once carried marketing data now carry restless spirits and malicious directives. Beneath the polished mall floors, the illusion thins further. Gregory can uncover decaying earlier structures swallowed by the Pizzaplex's foundations, and in some paths, he and Freddy descend into a ruined underground stage where William Afton's latest shell, Burntrap, waits in a nest of cables and fire-damaged machinery. Outcomes branch like uneasy dreams. In one, they overload the facility, setting off blazes that race through attractions. In another, they crush or burn Afton's body again, collapsing parts of the complex and damaging whatever underground remnants still linger. Each ending is different, but many involve flames, smoke, and another attempt to erase evidence. For Fazbear Entertainment, this single night is an inflection point written in sparks and error logs. Their greatest showcase of automation, surveillance, and AI is turned against them, exposing how easily the company's haunted history seeps into new hardware and new software alike. Whether the Pizzaplex burns, partially survives, or limps forward under new cover stories, the pattern remains. A disaster to explain away, a facility to quietly abandon or rebrand, and a question hanging in the dark about whether they can ever truly control what they've unleashed, or if the cycle is already drifting slowly toward its next repetition. Ruin and aftermath, picking through the ashes again. So we follow that cycle into the ruins, and this time we do not find a cheerful lobby or neon-washed food court waiting for us, but a wounded building breathing in the dark. The Pizzaplex, once blindingly bright, now sits in partial blackout, whole wings without power, whole corridors lit only by emergency strips that flicker and hum like restless spirits trapped in the walls. Security shutters hang half-closed, frozen mid-motion when the systems failed, and while escalators stand motionless, their chrome steps gathering dust and ash. You can almost picture us walking those quiet paths, drifting slowly past shuttered boutiques and broken prize counters, as if moving through the haunted shadows of a shopping mall that never really opened to the public again. Attractions that once boasted long lines now sag and creak. The Phaser Blast Arena scorched and warped. Roxy Raceway choked with debris. Monty Golf a swamp of stagnant water and fallen signage. The animatronics left behind are no longer mascots, but remnants. Some are slumped in charging bays, optics dead, plating cracked open to show frayed cables and scorched servos. Others still twitch and wander, their pathfinding ruined, looping the same short routes, bumping quietly into walls, governed by code that has been patched, corrupted, and patched again until intention and malfunction blur. This is not a clean shutdown. It is a lingering, mechanical afterimage. Outside the structure, Fazbear Entertainment responds in the way its history has taught it to respond. There will be a statement, carefully worded, acknowledging an incident or structural failure, while avoiding names, dates, and any admission that something deeper went wrong. There will be promises of cooperation with investigators, while internal memos quietly focus on insurance, liability, and whether the Pizzaplex is cheaper to repair, to partially reopen, or to quietly write off as a loss. We have seen this before, step by step, in newspaper clippings about missing children, in bland press releases after bite incidents, in the way old Freddy's locations were simply boarded up and left to rot. The company does not confess. It pivots. It licenses its own tragedies into horror attractions, turns its ghosts into marketable lore, and when fire comes, it treats the ashes as an accounting problem rather than a moral reckoning. Yet even in ruin, the Pizzaplex refuses to become just another closed location on a spreadsheet. Physical remnants linger, burned plush on the floor, melted signage, claw marks along concrete where something heavy tried to escape. And beneath that, in servers and maintenance terminals that never fully powered down, corrupted code still loops and calls. A tangled web of routines shaped by years of contact with agony, mimicry, and the digital echoes of those earlier experiments. Here is the pattern interrupt in our long timeline. We pull back and compare, from a modest diner with springlock suits to a collapsed megastructure whose foundations are layered with unmarked tragedies. Fazbear's instinct has never truly changed. They build on top of wreckage. They bury one haunted history beneath another, hoping that brighter lights and bigger stages will distract from the quiet tragedies below. As we leave the darkened Pizzaplex behind, we carry that pattern with us, because the story is not finished. If a company keeps rebuilding over its own haunted foundations, how long can the structure stand before the weight of its legacy forces everything to finally fall? The corporate pattern, denial, rebranding, expansion. When we pull back from the flickering lights of any one location and look at the whole timeline, a pattern begins to emerge, drifting slowly into focus. From that first humble Fredbear's Family Diner in the 1970s to the towering Pizzaplex of the 2020s, Fazbear's history is not just a sequence of accidents and hauntings, but a repeating corporate rhythm, steady and strangely familiar. We began with a small partnership and springlock suits that were never truly safe, even in those early quiet hours. There were the first disappearances, the missing children incident that turned cheerful mascots into haunted shells, the bite of 83, the bite of 87, each tragedy carving another wound into the company's legacy. Locations closed, yes, but they rarely stayed closed. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza would shut its doors with a bland statement and then reopen elsewhere with new carpeting, new animatronics, and the same ghosts in the walls. Step by step, the cycle repeats. A tragedy erupts. Minimal accountability is taken. A brief apology. A vague memo about ongoing investigations. A newspaper clipping that hints at, but never proves, the worst. Then comes the rebranding. A fresh logo. A new cast of characters. A brighter paint job. The underlying issues, the dangerous technology, the refusal to confront what really happened, are left untouched, buried beneath smiling posters and discount coupons. When the surface-level restaurants falter, the pattern does not break. It adapts. Underground, in the sister location facility, the Funtime animatronics are designed to capture children with surgical precision, even as the company insists on family fun in its brochures. Later, they license their own haunted shadows as entertainment, turning the tragedies into the Fazbear's Fright horror attraction, selling tickets to walk through a curated version of their sins. When that burns, they move again, this time into digital realms. A VR game meant to clear their name. An AR delivery service that pushes corrupted animatronics into living rooms. A new kind of quiet tragedy hidden in code instead of concrete. Throughout it all, the in-universe documents whisper the same priorities. Safety memos focus on liability more than lives. Training tapes calmly instruct employees to ignore certain sounds, to follow scripts, to keep the show going. Advertisements promise fun, nostalgia, and prizes, while legal disclaimers trail behind like restless spirits, reminding us that the company's first concern is optics, then profit, and only distantly truth. In that light, the hauntings and digital corruptions feel less like random curses and more like the natural consequence of a culture that refuses to learn. Human decisions give the supernatural something to cling to. Every cover-up, every shortcut, every decision to reopen on top of a graveyard of secrets helps the darkness take root, until the line between business choice and ghost story blurs. So we are left with a quiet question hanging over the ashes and neon. Can a company like Fazbear ever truly die? Or will its name keep resurfacing in new forms, as long as there is an audience willing to let the tale wash over them and pay to dream with the bear one more time? When should Fazbear have fallen? And that quiet question leads us, almost inevitably, to another. When, in a world that made ordinary sense, or should Fazbear Entertainment have finally fallen and stayed buried? As we drift along this timeline, it can be strangely calming to pause, to look back over the tangled web of disasters, and to imagine where the credits should have rolled, even as we know the story keeps moving, drifting slowly through new haunted shadows. The first point is the missing children incident, the early murders that turned cheerful dining rooms into crime scenes. In any realistic corporate history, a string of disappearances tied to one restaurant chain would have meant relentless investigations, executives on trial, and a brand so poisoned that no parent would ever walk through the doors again. Instead, in this universe, the company shutters, remodels, and reopens under fresh paint and recycled mascots, relying on legal maneuvering, in non-disclosure agreements, and a public willing to forget as long as the pizza is cheap and the animatronics keep singing. Then we move to the bite of 87, a moment so infamous that it echoes through employee manuals and whispered rumors. A child, gravely injured by an animatronic on camera during business hours in a place built for innocent birthdays. Realistically, this is the kind of tragedy that triggers federal investigations, massive class action suits, and permanent closure. Yet here, Fazbear responds with restricted animatronic movement, revised safety protocols, and another quiet rebranding. as if horror can be managed with a policy update and a new slogan. Afton's eventual exposure, the realization that a co-founder is a serial killer hiding inside the mascot suits, should be the absolute end. In our world, and that revelation alone would stain every shareholder, every franchise, every smiling Freddy poster with an indelible guilt. But in this haunted history, the company dissolves on paper and then reincorporates later under new shells and LLCs, as if corporate names can shed sins while restless spirits refuse to move on. The fires, too, should have been final. Locations burning down, security footage and rumors pointing to something deeply wrong in the foundations ought to have convinced insurers, regulators and investors that this legacy was cursed beyond saving. And yet, out of those ashes rises the Pizzaplex, a neon monument to investor optimism and cultural amnesia, turning the very myth of Fazbear's tragedies into marketable atmosphere, a place where guests pay to brush against the edge of a legend they half believe. By the time the Pizzaplex collapses into disaster, with missing children, shattered animatronics, and digital corruption bleeding through games and AR services, the company feels less like a business and more like a narrative device, a vessel for an ongoing commentary about how, even in our reality, some corporations outlive scandals that should have ended them. We watch Fazbear survive because the story needs a familiar stage, but also because it reflects a quieter truth about memory, profit, and the way people keep returning to comforting brands, even when the history is dark. So as we follow this history step by step, you might gently decide, in your own quiet hours, where Fazbear truly ends for you. Was it the first child lost, the first bite, the first fire, or the last crumbling mall? The official timeline drifts onward, but somewhere along the way, each of us feels the curtain should have fallen, even as the show, for now, goes on. Lingering echoes, Fazbear's legacy in a digital age. And yet, even if we choose a moment where the curtain should have fallen, the story does not really end there, does it? The buildings can burn, the signs can come down, the last official Fazbear location can be condemned, but the company's presence lingers in quieter places, drifting slowly through the spaces between code, memory, and myth. Even in universe, long after the final mall storefront closes, Fazbear lives on in recordings and replicas, in training tapes and grainy security footage, in home video cassettes tucked into old boxes. There are bootleg cartridges of cheap tie-in games, half-finished promotional software buried on forgotten hard drives, and unlicensed VR experiences that outlast the very offices that commission them. Fans within that world rip models from those games, archive every menu screen, and pass around leaked builds like ghost stories, so that even when the restaurants are gone, their haunted shadows remain, preserved in pixels instead of plywood. Once William Afton's presence is translated into Glitchtrap, the curse becomes even harder to erase. He is no longer tied to a single suit or a single room. He is a pattern, a sequence of instructions that can be copied and carried, as fragile and as enduring as any legend. As long as someone installs that game, as long as the developer reuses that code, as long as a file is backed up to a server that no one remembers to shut down, his restless spirits of violence and obsession can, in theory, flicker back to life. The tragedy stops needing a body, it only needs a connection. Around that digital core, the mascots themselves soften into cultural icons. Children dress as Freddy or Chica for Halloween, not out of fear, but because the characters feel nostalgic and familiar, echoing a history they never personally lived. teenagers dare each other to spend a night near the ruins of an old pizzeria, trading urban legends about missing night guards and flickering lights. Old commercials resurface in compilation videos, and people laugh gently at the dated animation without quite realizing how much quiet tragedy is buried behind those smiling faces. The brand becomes a dreamlike backdrop, less a functioning company and more a shared reference point. And by listening to this, by letting the tale wash over you in these quiet hours, you are part of that afterlife as well. We are together walking through a museum that no longer exists, tracing a timeline that only survives because we agree to remember it. Every time we say the names, recall the incidents, or picture the dimly lit party rooms, we give Fazbear a little more borrowed time, even as we understand that it should have ended long ago. So, as the noise of lawsuits and headlines fades, and the digital echoes hum more softly in the background, we can begin to let the story settle. The tangled web of Fazbear's legacy will not vanish in an instant, but we can dim the lights on this stage, step by step, and move toward the final, quieter chapters that wait just ahead. A soft recap, from diner lights to digital ghosts. So as the noise fades and the echoes grow distant, we can let the whole story rise once more in a gentler light, not to analyze every detail, but to drift back through the timeline and see the shape of it as a whole. We are drifting slowly now, looking down over decades of quiet tragedies and haunted shadows, letting the tale wash over us rather than pull us under. It begins with a diner. Fredbear's family diner, small and hopeful, with Henry, Emily, and William Afton standing behind those early dreams, building springlock suits that could be both costume and machine. In that warm, flickering space, the first animatronics dance for innocent children, while behind the curtains, tension grows between an inventor who wants safety and a partner already tempted by darker possibilities. The first tragedies arrive almost quietly. A child crushed in a springlock failure, another child, the crying child, bitten at Fredbear's stage, his last birthday turning from celebration into coma and then into grief. From there, the pizzerias multiply. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opens and reopens, each new location promising family fun, each one quietly carrying the weight of what came before. Afton lures children into back rooms, and they never come home. The missing children incident stains the company's history, even as the animatronics begin to move with restless spirits inside them. There is the bite of 87, another headline, another wound in the timeline, and each time, Fazbear responds the same way. A closure here, a remodel there, a new grand reopening to bury the lawsuits and the rumors under fresh paint and bright posters. Beneath all of that, hidden away from parents and birthday parties, another layer forms. Underground facilities, sister location, Funtime animatronics designed not just to entertain, but to capture, to experiment, to harvest remnant from suffering and death. Afton dies and returns and dies again, sealed in a springlock tomb, trapped in a burning horror attraction, consumed in Henry's final fire, yet his presence lingers, clinging to metal, to agony, to code. Henry, weary and resolute, gathers them all, his creations, Afton's monsters, the children's souls, and tries to end it in one last blaze of cleansing light. But the legacy does not stay buried. Years later, Fazbear Entertainment, LLC, rises again, smaller on paper but ambitious in its reach, turning its own haunted history into VR games and AR services. Testers wear headsets and meet Glitchtrap, a digital echo of Afton, while players receive visits from animatronics in their own homes. Then comes the Pizzaplex, towering and neon bright, with glamrock stars on stage and new mysteries in its foundations, as if the dream has been rebuilt on top of every unresolved nightmare. And now, as we look back across this tangled web of diners and malls, of fires and rebrandings of flesh and restless code, we can let it all grow quiet. Fazbear's name has risen and fallen so many times that it feels less like a company and more like a lingering story, a shadowed legend passed between fans and files. For tonight, we can imagine that the stages are dark, the servers are idle, and the ghosts of rumor and data are finally gently settling into silence. Drifting away from Fazbear, closing the file. So now, as those stages darken and the last echoes of music fade from tiled hallways and carpeted party rooms, we can begin to step back. The neon signs that once buzzed above parking lots and mall entrances can flicker, dim, and finally blink out, one by one, until the plazas and the side streets outside are left in quiet, ordinary night. Inside, we can imagine the animatronics standing perfectly still, their servos cooling, their eyes no longer tracking movement, the restless spirits that seem to linger in them easing away for a while. Monitors that once streamed grainy camera feeds can show only their own reflections in dark glass, and the tangled web of wires under desks and in ceilings can rest without carrying any more frantic signals or alarms. Everything that hummed and clattered and stalked in haunted shadows can, for tonight, be gently powered down. We have followed this timeline from the earliest dream of a friendly diner to the last corrupted file and broken mascot, and for now, that is enough. You do not need to remember every name, every date, every quiet tragedy or corporate rebranding. The rise and fall, the experiments and fires, the cover-ups and confessions have all unfolded step by step, and they can simply drift past like images in a dream. If details blur or vanish as you drift off, that is all right. The story will hold itself together without you. In these quiet hours, there is nothing you have to do, nothing you have to solve or fix. We have walked through missing children and malfunctioning suits, through lawsuits and press releases and desperate reopenings. And we have watched Fazbear's legacy stretch from dusty show stages to glowing VR headsets and AR overlays. Now, we can let the tale wash over you one last time, not to analyze it, but to let it soften at the edges and fade into the background of sleep. If you found comfort in hearing this long, strange history told gently from beginning to end, you are welcome, whenever you wish, to return to it on another night and drift slowly through it again. If you'd like more stories like this, you can very quietly like the video, subscribe, or save it for later, but only if that thought can stay light and effortless, like a small note left on a table to be read in the morning. Thank you for staying with us through this haunted history, for sharing the slow journey through fictional files and shuttered locations, and for listening as we traced innocent smiles and hidden tragedies across decades. It has been a quiet companionship, moving together through shadows and static until the noise finally fell away. Now, picture a single monitor in a back office, its green power light clicking off with a soft tick, leaving only the faint, lingering hum of electronics cooling. Somewhere, an empty stage gives one last gentle creak as the building settles, and then there is only stillness, and dark, and rest,